The purpose of this video is to provide a user's guide to the web-based tool for evaluating the potential merits of the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, otherwise known as NAP, for crops for which you are considering purchase of yield loss risk protection. Our focus is on the new buy-up feature facilitated by the 2014 Farm Bill. The presenters are myself, Adam Kantrovich, a farm management educator with Michigan State University Extension, and Eric Fisher, Farm Services Agency, USDA, for Michigan. The U.S. Department of Agriculture facilitates a number of disaster assistance, yield loss, and revenue loss risk management programs. Two key programs are the crop insurance administered by the Risk Management Agency, RMA, and the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, NAP, administered by the Farm Service Agency. Crop insurance provides farms producing corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, and rice a variety of insurance contract options. Farms producing these crops can purchase coverage against yield or a revenue loss risk. Prevented planting and other risk protection features are also included in most policies. Farmers pay a subsidized premium for participation in these insurance programs. Private insurance agents sell and service these policies. There are a large number of other commodities covered by crop insurance under a wide array of insurance policies. These include crops such as apples, cherries, potatoes, citrus crops, nut crops, pasture, and forages. The NAP program administered by FSA provides yield loss risk protection for crops not insured under crop insurance or if crop insurance is in a pilot status, such as Cherry Revenue Insurance Program. NAP also covers cases where crop insurance exists but coverage is not available for your crop's type and intended use. The 2014 Farm Bill substantially changed NAP. Previously, the maximum coverage farmers could purchase was 50% of their approved historical yield, and shortfalls were paid at 55% of the NAP market price. Now, coverage can be purchased for up to 65% of approved historical yield, and yield shortfalls are paid for at 100% of the NAP market price. This is a major improvement in yield loss risk coverage. Eric, how do you see this tool being used by farmers, lenders, and FSA staff?
We all know and understand the value of useful tools in any task requiring efficiency and accuracy. With the tool available to producers, lenders, and FSA staff, it certainly allows each of us to communicate and work from the same page very quickly. The web-based tool provides a good indication of NAP policy value on your farm's financial risk management program. The tool immediately puts the user on solid data as NAP crop eligibility is addressed. The tool provides the user with a good perspective on the APH yield, which is the basis for coverage, the NAP market price, your crop and whole farm premium, and what payments would be net of premium under alternative yield scenarios.
The web-based tool can be found in multiple locations on the internet. Here on the screen you can see some of those URLs. We are going to use the longer of the URLs just so that you can see that there is a number of pieces of additional information besides the tool itself, including the NAP program fact sheet and the 2016 crop year basic policy provisions. The second bullet down under Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program related information. Access the online NAP tool, determine NAP crop eligibility, and estimate the NAP fees, premiums, and payments. We click here and it brings up a new page. Now before we begin, the tool does have a few quirks. Do not press the enter key as you move through the tool. Use the tab or use your mouse's cursor. Do not enter any commas or dollar signs when entering numerics. Also, if you would like to restart the program or the page, make sure you click on the red Restart or Reset Page button found here. As you move through this tool, you will notice occasionally a little blue icon next to different locations that has a little I on it that stands for information. This will help provide you information with what has to be filled out in that particular section or what this particular button does. It will take you between 5 and 10 minutes to run the program if you have all of the necessary and relevant information available to you. Our first step is to determine whether a crop is covered by RMA facilitated crop insurance. This establishes our eligibility. We start by defining the state and county in which the farm exists. Once the state is chosen, you'll notice Select County box appears. We will locate Grand Traverse, click on Grand Traverse, and a new box area appears on the screen that has RMA check. When we notice that little information icon, it provides you information with some of your next steps. This helps indicate the purpose of this particular field. So our first step is going to be able to locate and choose a particular crop. If the RMA policy covers the crop type, and the crop intended use that we are interested in, the FSA NAP program is not available. So let's go ahead and select a crop that we are interested in providing coverage for. You'll notice that we see apples, barley, corn, and some other crops, but what we do not see are cherries. Therefore, we will choose not listed. From here, a message will appear indicating that the crop we are interested in is not on the list, which indicates that a crop insurance policy is not currently available for that crop of interest, or that crop's insurance policy may be considered a pilot insurance program.
And this is a case where there is a crop insurance policy, a revenue policy, but it is in pilot state. Farms currently have a choice between a revenue shortfall risk policy and a NAP yield shortfall risk program. Later, we'll cover the case where crop insurance is available but does not cover the crop type and intended use. Hence, the crop is available for yield loss risk protection using NAP.
So as we entered not listed, a new button has popped up, NAP crop information. And again, if we slide over our cursor over that I button, it provides you with information on your next steps. The first drop down is select crop. If your crop is not listed, it is uninsurable by RMA. Click on not listed and the NAP crop information tab will appear. If your crop is insurable, the next drop down will be RMA's type classification. So as we move down here, shows not listed. We click here, we enter your crop information. Eric, what is showing up on this particular list? This list seems to be much more full of potential crops than the previous.
That is an inclusive list of the NAP crops available for Grand Traverse County.
And in our example, we're going to be using cherries in Grand Traverse. And here I found cherries. And our next step is to select the crop type. So there's a subtype of these particular cherries, sweet or tart. And for our example, we will be using tart. Then a type of practice. Here we have irrigated or non-irrigated, and we will be using not irrigated. And then our intended use, fresh or processed. And for this example, as most tart cherries are for the processed market. Now the planting period, here we have only one choice. For perennial crops, we would choose one. But there are many other crops that may be planted multiple times or at various times throughout the season, such as radishes, correct?
Correct. Lettuce is out there as well as multiple plantings.
So now once we have filled all of this out, we now have some additional information that has appeared along with some additional boxes that we are apparently going to have to work on. What is the role of some of this information, FSA market price, unharvested factors, etc., that we see here?
The market price is the price used to value yield shortfalls below the yield guarantee. The market price also enters into the calculation of the NAP premium when a buy-up policy is purchased. The price is based on a historical average, so for the 2016 tart cherry policy, it was 33 cents per pound. Now the approved yield area for the farm is based upon the farm's historical average yield for a crop, but the county expected yield is 6,110 pounds. So for Grand Traverse, that was for 2016. This will play a role in your yield guarantee calculation if you do not have at least 4 current consecutive years of yield information. The county expected yield also plays a role if a farm has had a very low yield in the historical period, as we shall see in the next step. The calculation of the farm's approved yield, the acronym would be APH. The unharvested factor, 80% for tart cherries for processing, comes into play when there is no harvest. With no harvest, the policy pays on 80% of the yield shortfall since there are no harvest costs. Let's put the cursor on the approved yield question to see what information is needed. The choices are the farm has been participating in the NAP program and has a 2016 approved yield on record, or the farm has an estimate of their historical yield that is adequate for this screening analysis of the merit of considering NAP buy-up, or the farm will enter their historical yields to calculate the approved yield. So let's calculate the approved yield from our example farm's historical yield. Let's check the help question before we start so we know what we need to enter. Okay, we see the calculation requires a minimum of 4 consecutive years of production to calculate the average. Up to 10 years can be used, and once the process starts, it becomes a rolling average. If you have 10 years, next year the oldest year will be dropped and the most recent year will be added. Pears and peaches are an exception, as they are on a 5-year rolling average. What happens if a farm has not maintained a yield history or has fewer than 4 years? The approved yield is based on 65% of the county expected yield. On the other hand, if 3 years are available, the 4-year average is based upon 3 years at the county expected yield and 1 year of the farm's yield. The example farm's historical yield for the last 10 years, which we enter in the calculator, are:
the first year we are going to have a total of 4,300 pounds per acre.
The next year we'll have 5,009 pounds. The third year will be 7,795 pounds. The fourth year, apparently a bad year, we have a 0.
In the fifth year, 6,012.
And the sixth year, 4,293. The seventh year, apparently an extremely good year, we had 12,239 pounds. In the eighth year, we had 6,389. The ninth year, 8,881. And the 10th year, we have 7,587.
And as you notice as we went through here, no dollar signs were used, no commas were used, and we used either the cursor to move into one box to the next or use the tab.
And that's what's really nice about this tool. It allows the user to put in their data.
And so now as we go ahead and we calculate our yield by calculating my approved yield, we notice here in the approved yield it does a calculation of 6,647.65 pounds to the acre. One note, if I click this calculate approved yield again, you'll notice that in the fourth year, where we had a 0, it did provide a calculation of 3,971.5 pounds. Why is that, Eric?
Well, it's due to if the yield is below 65% of the county expected yield due to natural disaster, it is replaced by 65% of the county average yield.
We need to continue filling out some additional information. The anticipated yield, as you'll note here, is the actual realistic expected yield that the farm will use in profit, cash flows, financial balance sheet projections. This may actually be higher or lower than the actual APH. In this example farm, the farm uses 6,800 pounds to the acre. This particular farm is farming 75 acres of trees that meet the NAP rules for coverage. Now for perennial crops, yields must reach a threshold level following orchard establishment to actually be eligible. The farm has a 100% share in the revenues for this particular acreage. It is possible that we have partnerships that have been dealt with, and each partnership has a percentage share. And so if we were to work this through to look at an individual partnership, here's where we would place that percentage partnership. Once we have all the information filled in, we click on Calculate My Premium. You'll notice the additional tab. They continue to build as we go through this particular process. And as we look up here, your NAP estimated premium and guarantees.
These are premiums for the risk coverage. There is also a fee for administration, which is calculated in the Calculate My Tool Premium and Fees module that comes next. So basic coverage is the level that was available before the 2014 Farm Bill. That coverage is still available. The farm pays an administration fee, but no fees for yield and prevented planted risk coverage. The premium is 5.25% of the yield guarantee valued at the NAP market price. The maximum payment for yield shortfalls is $125,000. So therefore the maximum premium again is that 5.25%, which totals out to $6,563.
So Eric, regardless of how many acres I have, crop varieties, etc., no matter what, I will always max out at that $125,000 in a worst case scenario.
That's correct. The maximum of $125,000 and a maximum premium of $6,563.
Okay, so now if I'm looking at our example farm here, if I take a look at the 65% coverage level, which is showing that I would actually be covering 4,000 for a yield guarantee per acre of 4,321 pounds. How do we begin to, if you walk me through this process on figuring out my guarantees, etc.?
Well, that premium again, using the 65% coverage, is the 43.21 pounds of guarantee times our NAP market price, which is 33 cents a pound, which would equate to $1,413 an acre. So you multiply the 1413 times the 5.25, which calculates for a total of $74.20 an acre. Or in our case, our example with 75 acres, that's a premium due of $5,564.
And does that premium include our administrative fees?
At this point, it is not here. It shows up in the calculator, but this example is strictly the premium.
Under this particular scenario, my maximum potential payout is $106,000, okay, or actually just above, which is less than the cap of $125,000 if we were to have a full disaster.
Correct.
If this farm were to have 100 acres of tart cherries, then the potential payment, taking 100 acres, times the $1,413.39, I'm assuming 65% coverage, and the same yield guarantee per acre of $43.21, would give me $141,300. So me just going from the 75 to the 100 acres puts me over that $125,000 limit, correct?
Correct.
And so I will be capped at that 125, but my premium cost is also capped, that same 65, 63?
That's correct. It'll never be over 65, 63, nor would any program benefit be over $125,000.
Now, as we talk about those particular administrative fees, if you're a beginning farmer, a socially disadvantaged farmer, or a limited resource farmer, there's a reduced rate on some of the premiums and the administrative fees, correct?
That's correct. For those, that group that you just mentioned, beginning farmer, socially disadvantaged, or limited resource, the premium would be reduced to 50%, and there is no administration fees. So therefore, in our example, that premium total would be $3,281.
So it's very advantageous for individuals in that particular level to really take a look at this particular program and take advantage of it to be part of their larger risk management program for the farm. And so as we continue to look through this and we move down to an estimated results piece, this last section really is the punchline for why do we want to consider NAP. It describes potential payouts, your net of premium for alternative yield scenarios, and coverage from basic with yield shortfalls valued at the 55% level of NAP market price all the way to 65% coverage with shortfalls valued at 100% of that NAP market price. The revenue from sales is also shown assuming sales are at the NAP market price itself, and the farm is paying an annual premium. So if we take a look under these potential yield per acres, we are able to notice and choose our particular coverage levels from basic to the 65% level and take a look at what the potential return is based on those commodity revenue, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I like the comparison that it gives you along the line.
This does allow you to begin to take a look at and create, if you follow my cursor, to begin to take a look at what particular levels under these scenarios where we begin to see returns and an increasing rate of those particular returns.
A very good risk management tool.
So now, Eric, payment for zero yield an acre has been adjusted for the non-harvest factor, which we described earlier in the NAP crop information section. These losses have to be associated with something, right? And we discussed some of those items.
The eligible cause of loss, correct.
Okay. Now, we're taking a look at this from a standpoint of all I'm growing is tart cherries. But we know many farms, especially in our particular region, have multiple crops that may be eligible for this. How can we use this tool to be able to determine costs, eligibility, etc.?
So if you have multiple crops, they work just like individual crops up to $125,000 maximum. So payments are based upon individual crop yield shortfalls, and again, they're just capped at $125,000. So there's an economic incentive for farms with gross revenues from eligible crops of $300,000 to $500,000 to ensure all eligible crops if yield data is available to support the yield guarantee, since the yields of crops are imperfectly correlated. The exception would be those susceptible to common weather disasters where the possibility of very low yields across the crop occurring at the same time is high. So let's calculate the total premium and fees here.
So if I go ahead and I click on Calculate My Total Premium and Fees button, this will bring up a new window. And this also provides check boxes for some of those populations that were described earlier that might receive additional subsidization of the premiums and be exempt from having to pay administrative fees. And I'm assuming that's, if I check one of those off, my end number will take that into consideration, throughout this
That's my
particular process.
understanding as well, right.
Under our first example, we have tart cherries, and my premium amount that in our example that we're going to use for that first crop of 75 acres of tart cherries with a premium of $5,565 would be entered here. If we have a second crop, so maybe this is asparagus, so if we say that there was a premium cost of $3,500, you would notice, just kind of doing some simple math, we're talking at over $9,000 in premium cost. Is there a separate administrative fee for each crop?
There is up to 3 crops per county, and it's $250 per crop,
Okay.
or $750 maximum per county. Quite often they have had us simply group, and I'll use caneberries for example, group them together as a red or a black versus a more specialty blackberry or something. But if the price is substantially different, that would be a good reason for us to pursue that and isolate that crop out by its intended use and type.
And this is good. This tool is used and can be used across the country for this particular program. You just have to, in the beginning, begin to start off with choosing the correct state, county, etc. Your FSA office is there to help if you have questions with regards to this. It's easy to locate this particular program and ought to be a part of your risk management strategies and tools, and just something else to have in your toolbox for the farm. And with that, we hope that you will take advantage of this particular program, and it is a worthwhile tool to use. Thank you.